Hello everyone and welcome to our What is Kanban webinar, hosted by Squirrel North. My name is Fernando Cuenca and I will be your host today. And well, we are really happy that you are joining us today, and we're hoping to provide you with information that is pragmatic that you can take back to your organizations immediately. Before getting started, let me tell you a little bit about us. So we are part of Squirrel North. We are a Canadian company based in Toronto, Canada, and we specialize in Kanban. We provide services like consulting, training, and coaching, aimed to improving management and service delivery, and we focus mostly on the Kanban method. As part of our team, you have Martin Aziz and James Steels, who will be providing with your content today. Alexis Zeglob, who will be monitoring the chat and the Q&A channel, and myself, Fernando, I will be your host. So all throughout this webinar, we encourage you to participate and engage with us. Submit your questions and your comments. To submit a question, please use the submit a question to the Q&A button in the bottom portion of your screen. Alexi will be moderating and if possible, answering the questions real time and curating the list so that at the end of the webinar, we can have a conversation. And if you have any other comment or if you'd like to chat with other participants, please use the chat window. And well, without any further ado, let's move on to the content. I will leave you with James and Martin, who will be talking about what is Kanban, when it is appropriate, and how we get started. James.
All right, thank you, Fernando. So I'd like to get started with this first part of the webinar by discussing what exactly is Kanban. And I want to do so in such a manner where we're very clear and concise on how we're describing it. So the idea here is not to teach Kanban, but to actually talk about its essence and the components that make it up. I want to do that by starting with two quotes. This first one by Janice Linden Reid. Kanban is a method that shows us how our work works. So the idea here is that we want to develop a shared understanding of how our work actually works. When we do that, we're able to reveal challenges and opportunities for improvement. A lot of the work that we're doing is hidden, and Kanban helps to unhide that. A lot of times when we're looking for improvement opportunities, we'll default to things like trying to provide people more training, just help them work faster, work longer hours. But a lot of times if you hold up a mirror to how your work actually works, you'll discover that trying to manage the flow of your work is often a really good way of improving your business performance. This second quote by Andy Carmichael, Kanban is not a process or a recipe or a framework. It's how to see work. The idea here is that Kanban won't tell you how to do your work. So it's not necessarily prescriptive. Think of Kanban as a lens. So a lot of you are probably familiar with the Scrum framework, for example. So that's a framework. I once heard a quote. Somebody said, Scrum is a way of doing and Kanban is a way of seeing. So the Kanban method is not going to be very prescriptive. It's not going to be telling you, do this, do that, change this in your org. It's going to provide a lens. So if you're looking for a way to think about it and define it, think about Kanban as a management method to improve business performance. So there are 6 general practices to the Kanban method. These are techniques that enable improvement opportunities to emerge. I'm just going to briefly describe them right now. So the first one, visualization. We talk about how Kanban helps you see how your work works. Well, we do that by visualizing various things. We might visualize our work, our workflow, the people doing the work. We might visualize risks associated with the work. So some things might have due dates. They might have different priority levels. So visualization is a really important component of the Kanban method. The second practice is limiting our work in progress. So we discover that if we want to be more predictable, we want to be less overburdened, we want to get things done more quickly, limiting the amount of things we're working on at the same time can really provide a lot of benefits in that regard. You'll also hear a lot of talk about flow when you're discussing the Kanban method. So the concept here is that when we're working on things and we're collaborating with people, a lot of times that work gets interrupted. It gets delayed. I'm sure we can all relate to that. So when we think about flow, once we start work, we want it to flow smoothly and get to the end, get completed with as little delay as possible. Making policies explicit. Well, these are the rules for how our work works. So what are the policies? We need to make those visible. We need to identify what they are. We need to work on evolving them. Again, this is all part about the shared understanding of how our work works. And then once we start doing these practices, we're going to need some feedback loops. We want to see how some of the changes we're trying to implement are doing. Are they helping us? Are they not making much of a difference? Are they hurting us? We need to get together once in a while and talk about these things and evaluate them. So Kanban has a set of feedback loops for helping us with that. And then lastly, we want to do this collaboratively, and we want to do this using the scientific method. So we're going to use data, we're going to use metrics to inform the decisions that we're making. So I'd like you to think about these general practices as simple and powerful ways to improve business performance. They are pragmatic guidance. Don't think of it as a checklist. Also keep in mind that these practices can be applied at varying degrees of sophistication. Then there are the change management principles. There's 3 of them. These principles recognize that we're dealing with human beings. We're dealing with change. So we need to be sensitive to that fact. So the first change management principle is start with what you do now. There's going to be no grand revolutionary, we're going agile and everything is going to change overnight. No, we're just going to start with how we do things now. And then we're going to work on trying to improve things in an evolutionary, in a manner that is evolutionary. So what do I mean by that? Well, the secret sauce to evolutionary change are 3 things. They're about introducing a stressor, providing a reflection mechanism, and then injecting acts of leadership. What do I mean by a stressor? Well, it's just a change. So trying something small in order to hopefully get some sort of profound effect. And then we need to reflect on that, perhaps with the Kanban feedback loops. And then, of course, we need leadership at all levels to make that happen. It can't just be one person. We need to create a culture and an environment where everybody can participate in making this happen. All right, so with those practices in mind and those change principles in mind, why are we doing this? What's behind it all? Well, customers have demands and businesses have capabilities, and those need to be in balance, or we want to get them into as much balance as we possibly can. Optimal business performance stems from having balance between demand and capability, but often they're out of balance, and we can probably all relate to that, right? Things are taking too long to deliver. We have too much work, perhaps not enough predictability. We got overburdened staff. everything's urgent. Maybe we're taking shortcuts on quality and exceeding budgets. So when that happens and there's an imbalance, we can often misdirect our improvement efforts, right? Maybe if we have too much demand, what are we supposed to do? Should we start refusing those work requests? Should we take the work on anyway and overburden our staff? What about the capability side of things? Should we hire more people, more training, work longer hours? Those are often the go-to things that people jump to right away, but we think there's a better way. So what can we do about it? Well, this is where Kanban comes into the picture. There's two sides to this balance. There's the shaping of demand side, and there's the improving our capabilities side. So these are techniques that really embody the 6 practices of the Kanban method. Now, it's not really important to get lost in all these fancy words, and don't worry about those right now. They're just on this slide to show you that we have a lot of tools at our disposal to help to try and bring things in balance. So improvement opportunities emerge when you discover the underlying causes of this imbalance, and Kanban enables you to bring that more into balance. So let's, now that we have those principles, the 3 change management principles, the 6 practices, and the notion of balance, I'd like to briefly frame those within 5 key concepts. And at that point, we should have a clear understanding of what Kanban is. So these are those 5 concepts. I'm going to review each one quickly. If you'd like to read more about this, of course, you can visit our website. You can download, we have a PDF there called What is Kanban? And we've actually had this PDF featured at Kanban Global Conferences. So you may want to check that out. So the first one, Kanban uses a variety of visualization techniques to provide clarity into our workflow, the challenges associated with that workflow, and it uncovers improvement opportunities. So typically you might start on your Kanban journey, maybe with visualizing tasks, visualizing the things that you need to do to get your job done. And over time, what we see as your Kanban system evolves is that ideally you want to evolve to visualizing what customers care about. So we might start to see a shift from a more task-oriented type of Kanban system to one that's really about customer recognizable value. So these manifest themselves in all sorts of visual models. And again, we're visualizing not just work and workflow, but policies, risks, due dates, urgency, maybe who the customer is, maybe even some dependencies. So visual models are the first concept. Now, with visibility comes the ability to manage flow. There's that flow word again. So Kanban makes flow issues, delays, and risk stick out like a sore thumb. Work can often get stuck. So if we can see it and we can discover the true nature of our imbalance between demand and capability, then we can do something about it. And remember that smooth flow of work is a key component of predictability. And predictability is usually something that customers are very interested in. The next concept is that of maximizing agility. At Squirrel North, we describe agility not in terms of what teams or individuals are doing, not in terms of practices, techniques, or a mindset you have. Those things may be important, they may help you, but we define agility in terms of assessing a business's fitness to serve and respond to its customers in a way that meets their criteria. So it's very customer focused. So when we want to think about agility, we want to think about how do customers view us in terms of agility. So how agile are we? Well, we look at things customers care about. So how often can we How frequent can we replenish our system? How often can we take on new work from customers? How fast are we? How predictable are we? How timely are we? So we look at those things. We look at our delivery time. And the last one, our ability to release, is how frequently can we get things out the door and into their hands? So notice, again, all these things are ideas behind the notion of agility, but they're very customer oriented and customer focused. Building on the three previous concepts, we now have the confidence and capability to know if we're getting better, know that our improvements are customer oriented, and know that we can manage customer expectations in a trustworthy manner. So we can do things like develop SLAs. SLAs are service level agreements. They're a way for us to manage our customer expectations responsibly. Now we can make promises and we can keep them. The last concept is that of a culture of respect and leadership. So this doesn't happen without involvement from everyone. Kanban empowers everyone to have the information they need to participate in taking action. So this idea of wishful thinking, just wishing things were different, or pointing the finger at team leads or managers or executives, that starts to go away. We can all do something about it now. In terms of leadership, I'd like to leave you with a quote from David Anderson, who's the founder of the Kanban method. And David said, "The maturity of an organization will be limited by the maturity of its leadership." So think about that and remember that. It's really important. All right, how about a Kanban board? So here's a Kanban board. A board like this might be an appropriate starting point for you. Remember, we start where we are now. There's no judgment in Kanban, right? Think about the appropriate application of practices and principles and take an evolutionary approach to change. And if you do that, you might end up with something that looks like this, right? This is a Kanban system that models the workflow of several hundred people delivering products and services. They didn't start here, and you won't either. But this shows you an example of the creativity and uniqueness of finding your own way. So in closing this section on what is Kanban, I'd like you to think of it in this way. Introduce a stressor, introduce a change, provide some reflection mechanisms, develop a culture of leadership at all levels, and you will improve your business performance by balancing demand with capability. That is the Kanban method. Moving on now, I'd like to start talking about when is Kanban appropriate? What purposes does the Kanban method address? When and why would you use it? To do that, I would like you to consider three viewpoints. Kanban addresses various business problems that can be considered from these three perspectives. I'm going to review each of them individually. The first, individuals and teams need to get things done. This is a more inward looking at your own organization viewpoint. The second, our customers have needs. We're in business to make money and meet them. The third, we need to make decisions and manage risks. That just means we need to make choices to maintain the viability of our business. So let's take a look at each of these. The first one, imagine if we could work at a sustainable pace, avoid burnout, and actually focus on a few things at a time, right? Most of us can relate to having too much on our plate, balancing too many balls, perhaps taking shortcuts on quality. Well, imagine a world where that wasn't the case. Kanban has techniques that are designed to help with these challenges. Improvements at the individual and the team level are important, don't get me wrong, but often they are not sufficient for really moving the needle in terms of significantly impacting business performance. So if you find yourself concerned with some of these things I just mentioned, and you're looking for some of the benefits that you see on the slide here, then yeah, Kanban, it might be or is in fact appropriate for you at the individual and team level. Now looking outwardly, imagine if we could make our customers happier by meeting all of their expectations with outstanding service delivery. The real big lever for impact to your business requires relentless focus on the needs of your customers. Your customers have needs and they have purposes for selecting your products or services. Not only do they have purposes for selecting you, they're going to judge you based on those purposes. So there are often things like trying to get things done faster, wanting you to be predictable, wanting you to keep the promises you make, and enjoying hopefully the quality of your services. So if these are things that you're looking to improve on, and you recognize that you need to make some headway on these things, then Kanban's appropriate for you. The third viewpoint, imagine if we could respond to emerging opportunities and make informed tactical and strategic decisions. So our third viewpoint involves thinking about the viability and future of our businesses. Leaders that start or run businesses are risk takers, right? And effectively managing a business requires the effective management of risk. But for this to happen, leaders must have the information and the techniques that they need to make appropriate decision. So Kanban and the techniques with it, the practices, the principles, they can be purposely directed along this front as well. So if we take those three viewpoints, they can map on to what in Kanban we define as the Kanban agendas, right? We have three of them. The sustainability agenda, this is where we're looking for more sustainable pace and improving our focus. Remember, that's usually at the individual and team level. The service orientation agenda, that's our outward looking agenda. This is where we really want to focus on business performance and customer satisfaction. The third level, the survivability agenda. This is all about the survivability of our business. We want to stay competitive and we want to remain adaptive. So think about those practices, apply the three change management principles. We have our 5 concepts and they all map to this agenda. When you think about those things, particularly the 3 agendas along with their viewpoints, it will help you discover, is Kanban appropriate for me? Is it appropriate for us? All right, is it possible that Kanban's not appropriate? Yeah, sure. Some examples for you. A leader who only wants grand gestures. Maybe you have one of those. Maybe they're looking for some overnight, big bang, revolutionary type of change that's just going to happen very quickly. So if there's no appetite for an evolutionary change approach, then yeah, the Kanban method might not be for you. But I do want to quickly note, a lot of times we'll find that people make the mistake of thinking that evolutionary change means that the results you get are also small. So we're going to try some small changes and we're going to get small results. I want to be clear that that's not the case. You can make small, appropriate changes that can have profound impact right away. So don't mistake evolutionary change for small or slow results. And hey, look, if you're already meeting or exceeding all your customer expectations, then just keep doing what you're doing now. If there's no variability in the work you do, if your business is not likely to change, if the market's not likely to change, if your customer's not likely to change their minds, yeah, if everybody's happy, then just move on to something else or keep doing what you're doing. Okay, what about in terms of who's using Kanban? So before I hand things off to Martin to talk about how to get started with Kanban, I want to make it clear that although Kanban is commonly leveraged in IT and with software development firms, it really is used across a wide array of industries in small, medium, and large companies. So here's just an example of a few of them. Again, if you visit our website, we have some articles on there. We point to a whole bunch of case studies. So the idea here is that deciding whether Kanban is appropriate for you is not about deciding what business you're in or thinking, oh, is Kanban just for IT? Is Kanban just for some sort of support ticketing system? No. If you want to think about when is Kanban appropriate, Kanban is appropriate when your business, whatever that business may be, is looking for a method that can be purposely applied across one of those three agendas that we talked about. And it's been our experience that once people start moving beyond that first agenda, that sustainability agenda, and they move into service orientation, this is where they can really start to achieve some astonishing results. So that's how I'd like you to think about Kanban being appropriate or inappropriate. And I'd now like to pass things off to Martin so we can learn about how to actually get started with Kanban. Martin?
All right. Thank you so much, James. So some good news on answering this question. How do we get started using Kanban? The easy answer is that it's not very complicated. In fact, it's quite simple to get started, and you don't have to spend a lot of money. There is a treasure trove of resources out there on getting started with Kanban. I would say that the path that most people take is by picking a copy of what's known as the Kanban Blue Book by David J. Anderson, which basically details pretty much the entire Kanban method, front to back, and is more than enough to get started. There's a whole bunch of other books. There are articles you could read on our website and other places where there's a more focus on Kanban. Podcasts, videos, links to all of these things are on our website. There's a resources page that can show you what books we recommend. Our videos and our various articles are there. So, there's really not a lot of barrier of entry. You can get started, you can read up on this, and pretty much you can spend the evening kind of going through some of these concepts and show up the next Monday at work and get going. So, the barrier to Kanban is really not that strong. All right. So let's talk about this in terms of performance over time. So connecting back to what James said about the Kanban agendas, there's this idea of what we call the sustainability agenda, right? So this is where you're going to have improvements at the team level, personal performance improves, team performance improves. Just general feeling of overwork can be addressed fairly quickly by leveraging a lot of the Kanban techniques that you could read from books and get through the resources we talked about. Quality gets better, collaboration between team members, and this overall sense of team agility starts to really coalesce. So the expectation there is you should actually start to see some bump up in your performance fairly quickly. Now, so this is good, but it comes with a bit of a caveat. And the caveat is really about this idea of early wins comes with early limits as well. So there's this idea of a Kanban plateau. You've hit the ground running fairly quickly. You've leveraged what you've learned, and so you've improved a lot of these things at a very team level. And so why is this plateau there? You know, one of the ways I would kind of help you kind of visualize this is thinking about Kanban from the perspective of the rules of chess. And so if you think about that, you can pick up a chessboard, learn the rules very quickly, and have fun and get some utility out of it. Now, in terms of getting performance at a broader level, so more profound business performance, you're going to have to get some more mastery. You're going to have to learn chess moves. You may have to apprentice from a master. You may have to join a club. What is your path towards mastery? And that is really where you have to think about, how do I get beyond this plateau of self-help? And this is a challenge that we see quite pervasive across the companies that we deal with. So if you are looking at most Kanban implementations across companies, most of them are below this plateau, which is they've reached a place where it's helped them, but those improvements have hit a wall fairly early. And so it's seen as this little niche thing that allows for certain team improvements, and that's about it. So how do you get past this plateau? So first we need to think about this idea of, where does mastery in chess come from as it relates to improving our Kanban practices? So the idea here is everything we saw before the plateau was mostly about team-focused improvements. And we need to get the customer involved in our Kanban initiative as well. So how do we get into what we call the service orientation agenda? Really making our improvements not only those that we experience inward, but those that we experience outwards, those who are consuming the various services and products that our company is bringing to marketplace. So this is now the area of end-to-end service delivery improvement. How do we ensure that if we are delivering a product or services that is delivered by multiple individuals, multiple teams, how do we improve the flow of that work from end to end, from the point where the customers ask for something and they actually experience the delivery of that? How do we get the right appropriate practices based on where we are today? How do we develop our leaders? How do we get our organization at a maturity level that is congruent with the expectations we have? How do we ensure that we don't get stuck in any kind of traps and dead ends with regards to our Kanban adoption? So these are some things that point to real business agility, improving what your customers are feeling. How are they actually consuming the various products and services that your company is bringing forward? So, there really isn't a huge trick here. The path there is really getting help. So there is a very large Kanban community of experts out there who can help you in various ways. And this is where training and coaching comes in. The training and coaching is your early tools. So really getting access to training has been something that we found that is a real differentiator of, just playing around with plateau limited Kanban, or really accelerating beyond that. Now, training and coaching come early, but so does the internal capability that comes along with it. So a lot of where the training and coaching is coming from is about developing your internal capability. And when we say internal, we're talking about internal coaching, but just as importantly, if in fact more importantly, is internal leadership. Do your leaders have the skills to understand how to manage their services, how to interact, how to see flow, how to leverage potentially metrics so that they can have more effective business decisions, help the propagation and development of Kanban, but more so about the propagation of improving their services. And then finally, tools usually come a lot later, although for those who were here at our last webinar, as we talked about tools for remote teams, this may be coming more to the forefront in terms of connecting your various teams and team members together so they can effectively use Kanban. So path to more sophisticated Kanban: training, coaching, developing your internal people, and developing your leadership, followed by a robust set of tools so that you can go in and effectively practice Kanban. So we're still talking about how to get started. And so the best method that is out there and we use quite extensively is this, this framework that it's known as STATIK. And it refers to systems thinking approach to introducing Kanban. And so STATIK is a series of steps that you follow. And it's delivered through a workshop where you get various people who are involved in the delivery of a particular service or services, and they start to really explore how that work is performed. What are the various things that we do, and how are we going to build a Kanban model to reflect how we work today? The idea here is that you're starting with where you're at. So how do we know that we're building a board that is reflective of how we're actually working today? Because we're going to be using that to continuously improve from. So STATIK is this kind of grounding mechanism that allows you to spend a little bit of time to go and analyze how you're working today. What are the various things that that you do in order to deliver services? What are our services? Who are our customers? What are they concerned about? What are we going to be actually fixing when we start to implement Kanban? So these are all various things that you need to consider before you actually start using Kanban. And so this workshop acts as this reflective mechanism to go about starting Kanban effectively. Now, there's a few paths you could do with regards to conducting this workshop. You could read Mike Burrows' book, Kanban from the Inside, where it details the various steps in STATIK, and then go about doing it yourself. You could take KMP 1, which is the Kanban Management Professional 1 class that teaches how to deliver this workshop. Or you can get someone who already knows how to do this. So a coach, internal coach who knows this, or an external one, to really facilitate and guide a group of individuals in kicking off their Kanban initiative. Typically, this takes 2 or 3 days of workshops where you're really diving in and developing what your Kanban system is going to look like. But the output of this is a coherent board, some coherent designs, your policies, understanding the various services that you are delivering and who your customers are and what they're expecting. All right. So you're getting a little bit more sophisticated with Kanban. You're getting some help. You've launched with STATIK, and you're starting to get exposed to all sorts of Kanban practices. There are over 150 practices out there. There's various techniques that you could introduce. Are you going to go in and introduce them all at once? Or if you're not going to be introducing them all at once, which ones are you going to introduce? And this can get very complicated quickly as you go beyond some basic Kanban practices. And so Kanban coaches over the last decade have been coming into organizations and advising in terms of what's appropriate. Where are you at today? What are some various challenges that you've solved, and what remain unsolved? And based on where you're at, these might be some appropriate practices on things that you're trying to achieve. And these may not be some other practices that you should avoid because they may not be problems that you're trying to solve, or they may even be mutually exclusive to some other things that you're doing. So they may not be things that you want to do all at once. And over the years of providing that coaching guidance, that guidance has coalesced in this model called the Kanban maturity model that now effectively democratizes a lot of that coaching guidance. So using something like the KMM allows you to figure out what are some appropriate options that I may want to bring into my organization in terms of Kanban practices, and maybe some inappropriate options that I'm going to keep out because they may cause some problems that we're not ready to deal with, or maybe they are about, they're too basic for us and we progress beyond them, or maybe they're too advanced for us and we're overreaching and we're not going to be ready for that. Now, the good news is There are people who know this model very well. They're Kanban coaching professionals or accredited Kanban consultants. And so as you go and kick off your Kanban initiative and you're thinking about broadening your practices, someone like that would be a very effective guide to help you figure out, so what is it that we're going to be doing next, and what are some options we may want to consider to do. All right, so we're talking about kicking off with Kanban and all these practices and maturing Kanban, but we really need to think about maturity from the perspective of, it's not the Kanban that you want to mature. It's your business outcomes. It's your organization's maturity that is really the most important thing that we need to focus on. So the point is not to do Kanban. The point is to achieve the appropriate business outcomes that you're seeking. So here's our checklist. Start where you are now. And James talked about this when we talked about our change management principles. And STATIK is something that allows you to do that. When you're building your first Kanban board, don't create a model of your future utopian state. You're building a board based on what you are doing right now, and you're going to evolve from that. So you're going to take an evolutionary approach to that change. You're going to think about what is wrong with the way we work today. What are some things that we don't like within our team? What are some things that our customers don't like? What are some things that we want to fix? What are some things that we want to change? And let's go in and try some changes in an evolutionary path. Thinking about going from that very simple Kanban board that James showed earlier to that huge optimizedly end-to-end organizational level board. How do we get there from an evolutionary standpoint? Remembering the 6 general practices and the 3 change management principles, using STATIK as this kickoff guide to really understand how you're working. And don't do it alone. You can get started alone, but certainly doing it alone is going to get you only so far. So get help. Leverage expertise to get some real business results. So there's the wrap-up, guys. So James talked about what Kanban is. He talked about when is it appropriate. So you want to be thinking about, okay, so given what I know and given the guidelines are appropriate, assuming that you find that it is appropriate, we just talked about how to get started. And like I said, the barrier to entry is not that high. So with that, I'm going to pass it back to Fernando, who is going to have a few announcements to talk about before we get into the Q&A session.
All right, so thank you, James and Martin, for this overview of the Kanban method. And before moving on to your questions, let's talk about a few announcements. First, just wanted to remind everyone that this session is being recorded. There's going to be a recording posted on our website in the next couple of days. And we also include the log of the questions. So if you have any questions, and the answers will be there as well. To learn more about Kanban in general, you can go to our website, as Martin mentioned before, and James mentioned before. We have articles there and other resources. We have also launched recently a podcast where we try to have conversations with real practitioners applying the Kanban method, and we launched a video series. You can find the first episode on our website. An exciting announcement we have is that our next webinar will be with Mike Burrows. We will be hosting Mike to discuss Agenda Shift. Agenda Shift is a continuous improvement and transformation approach he has developed and pioneered over the years that actually fits very well with Kanban. It's not just for Kanban implementations, but it fits very well with Kanban. And talking about Mike, we're also excited to announce that we've partnered with Mike Burrows to bring his deep dive Agenda Shift workshop to North America. We will be doing that in July 27th, the week of July 27th. You can sign up for that class already in our website. There are a few spots available. This is a great opportunity to learn Agenda Shift directly from its creator, and this is a deep dive advanced workshop. We also have a full lineup of training offerings for Kanban, and in particular, we would like to announce that we've added another an instance of the classes required to become a KCP, a Kanban management professional. That's going to be in late July and early August. And well, also, we would like to let you know that we've extended our 50% off discount to all the webinar attendants. So you can sign up to these classes you see listed on the screen by using those codes. And you can also book us for a 45-minute free online consultations if you have any questions about what's happening in your organization or what you've heard in this webinar or any other Kanban-related topic. Just schedule a call and we'll have a chat. And well, before moving on to the questions, one last thing. Before leaving this session, please consider filling up this survey, this feedback form. It helps us improve these sessions. You will find there a very simple question. Really, the survey will ask you what were your reasons to attend today, and the degree to which we have fulfilled your needs in this session. This will help us improve these webinars in the future. And with that, I will pass it on to Alexi to just go over. We have a few questions open, and if you have any other questions, please submit them using the QA functionality. It's in the bottom of your screen. And I think we have, Alexi, I think we have a couple of questions already.
Yes, Fernando, thank you. As you were finishing speaking, I was actually finishing typing one of the answers in the Q&A box. So we've got a few questions indeed. So let's revisit them. Our first question was, in Scrum, we release or plan to release after the sprint. How do we understand or plan the releases with Kanban? What are the parameters to consider to plan the release? This is a great question. Kanban helps you find the economically optimal batch size and the frequency of release. Economically optimal means it's optimal for the economics of your business. This often comes down to the transactional costs of your release and the customer tolerance for release frequency. It is also important to point out here that very often things that are described as how we do it in Kanban, well, you actually do those things in your business, not in Kanban. It's just before Kanban, you didn't know how you do them, and now you do. So in Scrum, we release after the sprint. That's a statement that often happens in Scrum training. And after the Scrum training is finished, what happens in the real world? There are Scrum teams that release not after the sprint. They release multiple times a day. They release 50 times in a sprint. And yet there are teams that will go 10 sprints without releasing anything. And anything in between happens in the real world. How do we know? In one word, Kanban. So with Kanban, we know what's really going on. Why is it happening? And then if we need to change that because the current condition is not satisfactory, Kanban helps us get from where we are to a more satisfactory condition. Another interesting question is, well, let's say a team decided to start with to-do, doing, done columns, and then they found out there is a lot in the doing column. Is that a stressor? And is it the right moment to improve? And the answer is yes. It is definitely a stressor. And it's a good moment for improvement. And it is calling for an active leadership. And if that active leadership is there, if there is a leader in this team or in this organization who can do something about it, things will improve. Another question is, what is my opinion about lanes with the team members' names in the Kanban board? Is it a sign of low maturity? Folks, I have to say I have no opinion on this. So I just have observations and evidence and case studies and stories. And as a matter of fact, there was one company that actually achieved great business outcomes with just this pattern. The catch is you cannot repeat their experience. Actually, 5 years later, they cannot repeat their own experience. So it is a well-known and documented pattern. It's known as the aggregated personal Kanban. It has its benefits and limitations. Simply put, this pattern occurs often when people transition from individualistic ways of working to more team-oriented. And this means if you're strictly focusing on personal effectiveness, you may not need this pattern. Or if you have already gone to very collaborative, team-oriented ways of working, or even beyond that, you took what Martin and James described as a service orientation agenda, and you are focused on solving customers and organizational problems, then you're probably way beyond this aggregated personal Kanban pattern, and that would be a step back for you. Or as Martin put it, you would basically hit the Kanban plateau if you were to apply it. So this is a great pattern in some contexts, not so good for others. How do we visualize the work of many different types of work activities, such as epic feature work items and bugs? So Kanban has a concept of a work item type, and this is something you uncover when you design a Kanban system with STATIK, the systems thinking approach to introducing Kanban. And in a realistic Kanban system, we typically find anywhere between 3 to 7 different work item types coexist. So whatever of these things you have in your actual process, with STATIK, you will basically design them into your Kanban system, and then the Kanban system will continually represent how these types of work items exist, coexist, and interact with each other, with your employees and with your customers, kind of in the real world. If we have a Kanban team, is it a no to have a Scrum Master? Quite opposite. So usually, what we find with Kanban, there is some coexistence of sustainability agenda and the service orientation agenda. And so what you do with the service orientation agenda, you have a manager who takes responsibility for delivering services to external customers. And so they improve that. But at the same time, there's the sustainability agenda, which is about how do we work together at the team level. And what we often find that people who have gone through Scrum Master training and people who have invested in this professional skill and have some real world Scrum Master experience, they often have the skills to actually solve this problem gradually. How do we work together as a team? So you can absolutely leverage the Scrum Master skill set to help a Kanban team work together, as well as interact with other teams and units of the organization. We covered a lot of Kanban basics. Don't see Kanban values. Have we moved away from Kanban values? Not at all. So we absolutely value transparency, balance, and collaboration as part of the sustainability agenda that James and Martin spoke about. And we absolutely value customer focus, flow, and leadership when we pursue the service orientation agenda, also described by Martin and James. Perhaps Martin and James just wanted to use a few words to get to their main point in this webinar. So thank you for catching this and pointing this out. So in short, we absolutely continue to practice and uphold those values. Uphold them through daily regular practice, and that's where all those Kanban practices come in handy. There is, I think that's all on the list of questions so far. So I'm going to turn this over back to Fernando.
All right. Well, if there isn't any other questions that we could answer, we thank you for your attendance and your participation here. Again, this session will be recorded, and you will have access to the recording later. And please fill up the survey on your way out, so you can give us some feedback about how this session went. And we will be happy to see you here in our next webinar, again with Mike Burrows in a month's time, more or less. And I thought we had another question, but it's a thank you message. Thank you so much for your comments. All right, so if there is nothing else, here we finish. Bye bye.